So maybe.
All right, well, why don't we push off? Welcome all to this month's gathering, if you will. And as we may have indicated before, we've got a good list of things going forward in coming months. We'll talk a little bit about the summer outing, which is scheduled for next month. We are thinking about scheduling one more Zoom presentation for August. That's to be determined. But we're also thinking of going back live and in person back at the biopark for September and October. We'll get you better
sidewalk to their front porch instead of having to walk down.
I'll probably ask you guys to mute the background noise.
I'm going to mute everyone. Okay. Those who are speakers, please unmute.
Matthew, you're still muted.
Matt, you're muted. Yeah.
Very much looking forward to getting back together in September and October at the biopark. Again, August, if we have one, will be a Zoom. And then we do have an event currently planned for July. It's at the Monumental Brewing Company, which is on Haven Street in, I guess that's Butcher's Hill. And we will talk a little bit more, but it is a follow-on, a piggyback to today's presentation. So we're very excited about that. We're also very excited about actually getting together. More details will be forwarded as we develop them, but we're hoping to make this either no cost or low cost, as we haven't been able to get together for our monthly lunches. And there is a component to it which involves some exercise for those of you who are inclined. So I think it will be great fun to do that. And with that, I'll turn it over to David Ben, who has been a key component of organizing this with the Baltimore Greenway folks. David?
Hello, am I unmuted?
Yep.
Okay. Good to see you all. I'm really looking forward to today's discussion, and I'll do a little intro and talk a little about this summer event. So just to do the intro first, I've been working with the Rail to Trails folks and the Green Network folks for quite a few years now as part of the Urban Design Committee, AIA. We and I particularly feel like it's a monumentally important project for the city. It's potentially a framework for development. It's a major connector. So we have this major 35-mile loop, and then we have the various pieces of the city, the neighborhoods coming together to network with it. I've been for years a member of the Waterfront Partnership in Baltimore, and I always had the problem that the promenade and the waterfront really wasn't connecting terribly well with its neighbors, its neighborhoods, even immediately joining, not to speak of the ones beyond. So I've always wanted to push for more of a network. And as you know, with our mass transit system in the city, which is not connected up either, we are always missing pieces of it. So I think what Jim and Jeff are going to talk about today are getting these pieces moving and getting this kind of whole network and loop together. They could make a huge big bang. It could be the next real nexus for development. If you look at what happened with Atlanta, everyone always talks about the Beltline there. There's been a monumental amount of development and even some mass transit hooked on to that as well. So I think it's a major opportunity, and we in the AIA Urban Design Committee have been trying to help with just getting the word out and helping with some workshops with the neighborhoods and things like that. And so I know that volunteer efforts are helpful, but it's good to get the word out with groups like this. So Jeff Noue has been working from the planning department and the city. They're the ones doing the network within. And with the city, I'm sure Jeff will talk about the challenges in terms of getting funding. I'm hoping maybe with the federal infrastructure bill, there might be some help with that. Jim has been working for years and really some major successes here in Baltimore, getting the trail moving. And he's now been, I'm going to joke, he's not been demoted, he's been promoted to Washington. And so luckily we still have him involved because he's been really key, but we also have Ethan Abbott, his associate, who's going to be giving us our trail ride, and who'll be presenting the big picture at our summer event. So that introduces Jim and Jeff. Ethan, I don't know if he's here. So I'll jump to the summer event and not take up more time. July 22, it's a Thursday. The theory right now is to about 4:30, get everyone together who wants to do a bike ride. And Ethan has taken us, I can attest to this, he has taken us around on a bike ride before, a good bike ride. And we'd ride for maybe about an hour, a little bit more, and hit a few places that are notable along the way. One of them, the city has just acquired another site. Jim, it's Norfolk Southern Railroad site, Haven Street. What is it?
It's not that site yet. It's called the Canton Railroad, and it is right off of Haven Street near O'Donnell Street.
Okay. Anyway, we'd probably touch on that. And there's a new piece of the trail that's been built. There's plans afoot that have been brought fairly far along for design on Boston Street, and we get down to the Canton waterfront and then circle back. So I've been pushing for the people who ride should definitely get a free meal. I don't care what you say, Matt. It's got to be free meal for them. They get extra points. So if you ride, you get the free meal. I'm voting for that one. But anyway, my vote may not count here. But where we come back, and then I think Ethan would do a presentation for everyone else who has arrived and is drinking away merrily at the Monument City Brewery. And it's a nice place. I've been there a couple of times. They have outside, inside seating. So we can hang out there and get some brown bag kind of lunches that Nicole's helping us with. And so, an actual real, not virtual, real gathering. So we're looking forward to that. And I will leave it at that. And I think, Nathan, you're supposed to be doing a more formal intro here.
Yep. My job is to give a more formal intro to Jim Brown and Jeff Noue. Jim is the one who will do the vision thing, and Jeff has been the one who has been implementing the Baltimore Greenway Trail. Jim Brown serves as the director of Trail Nation projects at the Rails to Trails Conservancy. He's helping to manage the development of the trail networks across the country. And prior to that, he served as the project manager for the Baltimore Greenway Trails Network. He has experience in urban environmental education, community development, and international nonprofit issues. He had previously worked with the Baltimore City Department of Recreation and Parks and served as a natural resource management volunteer for the Peace Corps in Tanzania. He holds a bachelor's degree in anthropology, a master's degree in landscape architecture. He's done academic research that he's presented to international Greenway planning, landscape architecture, transportation, and urban design conferences. He's a native Baltimorean living in Remington with his wife and 2 young kids. And then Jeff Noue is the special projects planner and planner, as well as planner for Baltimore City's Southwest District within the Division of Comprehensive Planning and Revitalization of the Department of City Planning. He's completed real estate, historic preservation, sustainability, and economic development projects over his career in the higher education and nonprofit sectors. He's been a contributing writer for the American Public Transportation Association. and the greater Washington, as well as other urban planning publications. He holds an economics degree from St. Mary's College and a master's in community planning from the University of Maryland, College Park. He's also a Baltimore native who loves outdoor recreation and exploring cities. With that, Jim, take it away.
Thank you, Nate. And thank you to LAI for having us. I'm going to kick it off and then hand it over to Jeff. Find the right thing to share. Can you all hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. So I should have shared my screen. Can you see the screen?
Yep.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, everybody. I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about the Baltimore Greenway Trails Network. And before we do that, I'll give a little background on the Rails to Trails Conservancy. We are a national nonprofit based in Washington, D.C., but with field offices across the country. And for the last 35 years, we have been helping communities develop trails out of abandoned or former railroad corridors across the country. But in the last five to 6 years, there's been we still do that, but there's been a significant transition to focusing on networks of trails, recognizing that trails by themselves are wonderful, but when they're really part of a connected network to other trails and other forms of transportation, they're much more valuable parts of communities. So what you're seeing on the screen right now are our 8 Trail Nation projects, where we're attempting to take to scale how working on these trail networks that are centered often around unused railroad corridors, but really encompass all types of shared use trails, can become part of communities across the country. Baltimore is actually the smallest in scale. The Baltimore Greenway Trails Network is a 35-mile concept right now, but there's real potential to turn it into a truly regional network. Excuse me. And then some of the larger projects that you see on the map, the Industrial Heartland Trails Coalition, are about a 1,600-mile network, of which close to 700 miles is built. And that would connect Pittsburgh, Cumberland, Morgantown, Cleveland, Ohio, Erie, Pennsylvania, and Western New York. And all the other projects you see are somewhere in between those two scales. So we're very excited about this work, and Baltimore definitely holds a special place for a lot of us on this call, and for me, and it shows how we can do a project like this in a city like Baltimore. So bear with my scrolling. I'm adjusting to the new PDF requirements, so I'll be scrolling through this, and I'm happy to share it after if you miss anything. So on the screen, you see the rough outline of where the Baltimore Greenway Trails Network goes in East Baltimore. And this is important for the July 22nd event, because like David mentioned, what you'll be seeing is a lot of the yellow line that's closest to you in the foreground, heading from the Inner Harbor, Canton Waterfront Park, up towards Monument Brewing, which sits along this unused railroad corridor, which we will be converting into the shared use path. And that's the line on your right. So as you can see, and this is just one half of the city, gives you an idea of where the trail network will go as it gets completed. And so what is the Baltimore Greenway? We're calling it a new standard of equitable development to transform safe transportation, outdoor recreation, and physical connections throughout the city. It's really about tearing down the barriers that have existed in our cultural and built environment, and such as unused railroad corridors or old brownfield sites or undeveloped shorelines, and turning them into the connective tissue that can tie neighborhoods together and tie the city together. It'll connect over 75 neighborhoods directly and be within a half mile of over half of the neighborhoods in the city. So we're talking about a 15-minute walk from over half of the population of Baltimore to some part of the Greenway Trail Network. And as Jeff and I will try to hit on this, this is really more than a trail. It's a real tool for community development that will promote social equity, improve health and wellness, have a significant environmental implications, promote economic development, and really create transportation options for all of Baltimore's residents and visitors. So on the right side of the screen, you see a map of the project, and I'll walk everybody through this, and Jeff and I can take questions too about it. But the solid lines that you see are the existing trail network, and the dashed lines are about the 10 to 11 miles of corridor gap that we're working on to create the 35-mile loop. So it's really building on the strengths of the Gwens Falls Trail on the west, the Jones Falls Trail in the center, and the Herring Run Trail in the east, and making them part of one network that connects all of the major parks in the city, very reminiscent of the Olmsted Plan for Baltimore, excuse me, from 1904, connects all of the universities, many of the hospitals, and like I said previously, it's very close to most of the neighborhoods in the city. On the left side of the screen are some of the highlights of the last few years. We've been very particular and diligent in building a broad-based coalition of over 50 organizations across the city that support this work. We have very recently have the endorsement of Mayor Scott as the Greenway being a priority as he transitions into office for mayor, and making sure that it's part of the city's equitable investment in neighborhoods across the city. We're part of other plans that exist. We've been incorporated into Greater Washington Partnerships Blueprint for Regional Mobility, as well as Baltimore City's Green Network Plan, which was adopted by the Planning Commission. And then some other points that I'll touch on later are how the private sector has been involved. But before I leave this slide too, some recent developments. Over $3.5 million has been raised to support the development of this network so far. And most recently with a $1.5 million grant from the state of Maryland in Maryland's FY22 budget to the city of Baltimore to develop the trail. And there's a $13.2 million member designated project as part of the House Transportation Infrastructure Bill, which is now sitting in the House of Representatives, that would be directed towards this project if that makes it through the Senate as part of the infrastructure plan moving through the House and Senate right now. And this slide highlights some of our major partners that we've been working on. I'll send a link with the presentation that lists everybody. But the group of 50 organizations is really a great mix of public and private sector partners throughout the city and the state. Significant support from the local philanthropic community and the private sector as well. But what really makes up the heart of this coalition is the investment from Baltimore City government and all of the neighborhoods across the city that have been part of the planning process for this project. So, and then I'll share a few quick examples. David mentioned the Atlanta Beltline, a 22-mile loop around downtown Atlanta that has generated $4.6 billion in private development as of 2018. This slide's a little dated, but that's off of an initial investment of nearly 560 million into the project. So nearly an 8 or 9-fold return on investment in this urban trail and transportation project. The Lafitte Greenway, a city a little bit more similar to Baltimore in New Orleans, I took this picture 2 years ago, well, sometime before COVID, and where it was just really impressive to see the amount of real estate development and investment in communities in these old brownfield sites that were adjacent to the former railroad line. As of last year, there's the Lafitte Greenway in New Orleans has spurred more than $100 million in public and private projects adjacent to the Greenway in a relatively short distance along a 4-mile trail. And then additionally, in another urban trail network in Indianapolis, we're seeing the average visitors, studies done by the University of Indiana or Indiana University say that there's been, that the average visitor to the trail spends $53 a day in local businesses, and that there's been a $1 billion new assessed property values on properties within a block of the trail network. So working off all of that with our partners at the Greater Washington Partnership and Ernst & Young, Ernst & Young developed an economic impact study for the Greenway to try to quantify some of the benefits that may come from the development of the Greenway. And so our estimates to fill out those remaining 11 miles of trail in Baltimore are $28 million for design, planning, and construction. And the report, which I'll also share when we share these slides, and I can throw it in the chat when I'm done as well, lists these benefits, potential benefits coming out of the trail. So just construction alone is looking at a $48 million investment into the local economy. And there's the potential for the aggregate property value adjacent to the trail to residential property value to be as much as $314 million. Now, so there's some more research that needs to go into that, but that could mean a $7 million increase in tax revenue for the city of Baltimore annually. But as we all know, that we have to talk more about more than just property value increases, but ways to make sure that displacement does not occur, what policies can be put in place to make sure that people that are renting or people that don't own their homes have the opportunity to become property owners and build wealth out of that. And we're looking at examples across the country to make sure that there's really an equitable development planning process in place to make sure that everyone benefits from this type of investment. And then some of the other benefits are a significant increase in walking and biking trips, new public transit, up to $113 million annually spent at local businesses along the trail, and very significantly reduced health costs, savings to local government and the general population in the reduction in costs associated with healthcare, that as people become more active and using the trail network across the city. And then this slide shows where the largest employers are in the city. And as you can see, they're mostly along either built or unbuilt sections of the network. So our goal is that by completing the gap, we're really breaking down some last mile barriers between where people live and where people need to get to work. And that's going to be done in combination with making sure that the trail network has really robust connections to the public transit that exists in the city. The built and unbuilt sections all intersect with all of the bus lines, all of the light rail, both MARC lines and the subway line as it goes through the region. The next couple of slides, recognizing time, I'm going to try to speed up. The next couple of slides highlight some of the disparities that those of us in Baltimore are very familiar with, and how the network could start to bridge some of the gaps that exist in the segregation that exists in Baltimore. The red sections of the map have higher rates of cardiovascular disease that can be tied back to inactivity and then tied back to lack of opportunities for safe physical activity. So we want to work with the public health professionals to see can completing the network and increasing access help to make a dent in these health disparities. Again, life expectancy is a very similar shade. The darker the map, the higher the life expectancy. And so we want to investigate, by working with community partners and university partners, can making these connections cut down on some of these disparities by opening up opportunities between neighborhoods and cutting down on some of the barriers that I've mentioned that exist in the city. And then as I'm wrapping up, I'm going to quickly go through some of what those corridor gaps are. Excuse me. The map on the left shows you the Olmsted corridors, and the images on the right highlight how close some of these amenities are and what it would mean to connect Druid Hill Park and Hanlon Park and Lake Ashburton with the neighborhoods that are around them, all via this interconnected trail network. And Mondawmin Mall sits right in between, which also has a significant transit hub for the city. So it's really about connecting all these amenities through the active transportation network. Again, this is on the east side where the Herring Run Trail would meet 33rd Street, and Lake Montebello and Morgan State have the opportunity to really serve as that anchor between the existing trail in Herring Run Stream Valley and the new trail that will be developed along 33rd Street to connect to Johns Hopkins, Charles Village, Druid Hill Park, and all of the opportunities that exist along that corridor. And this is a very exciting segment too on the east side of town, and this is where the event will be on the 22nd, is this unused railroad corridor. And a big thanks to David and AIA Baltimore and the Urban Design Committee for developing these graphics on the right, showing what the unused railroad corridor could look like as it leaves the Canton waterfront and goes north through Highlandtown, through these industrial and mixed use and residential neighborhoods. It can become this off-road connection that turns what is now a unused railroad corridor that is overgrown and vacant into this connective tissue throughout the city. And that's, this is a rendering outside the Monument Brewing of what it would look like when the trail comes through. And this is where you all will be having drinks with my colleague Ethan on July 22nd. Right now it's a parking lot, but all of the tenants and the brewery owners will tell you they're very excited to get rid of their parking lot and have it become this sort of trailside plaza that then becomes the front door of their business. And this is a very similar image. I added July 22nd with the 2 leader lines. Those are sort of the extents of where you'd be walking and biking and getting a drink on July 22nd. Some other examples, I'm gonna wrap up in 1 minute. Some other examples of the private sector getting involved are the Topgolf site in Ridgely's Delight. They're agreeing to help build some of the trail network north of the casino there. And that becomes part of the critical Inner Harbor to Middle Branch connection. I'm going to skip the collective at Canton because I know Jeff can talk more about that, but another example of the private sector stepping in and building some sections of trail in Southeast Baltimore. This is the utility corridor north of the Norfolk Southern Corridor, and BGE has committed to helping the city develop this trail that would connect the unused railroad corridor we just saw up to the existing Herring Run Trail. So that's a very exciting example of a local company getting very involved. Johns Hopkins University has built a section of trail off of their Homewood campus that will be a critical connection on those northern segments. This is down in Sharp Leadenhall, again, connecting to the Middle Branch. And I'll wrap up by just saying that, this effort is a big part of the Middle Branch redevelopment plan too, making sure that everything happening in Port Covington and Middle Branch is connected to this trail network. And this rendering was done in collaboration with a lot of residents in South Baltimore, telling us what they wanted to see as part of the trail network as it intersects with everything that's happening in Westport and the Middle Branch. So I'm gonna wrap it up there. There's some more Middle Branch slides. I can answer questions and talk about that later. And then again, as I'm closing out, this is what the network can look like as it gets completed throughout town. So I am done, and I can share this presentation and my contact info, and I'll stop sharing the screen, and then Jeff can take over.
Okay, yeah. As Jeff takes over, just remember. Put your questions in the chat, and we'll have both Jeff and Jim answer them. Jeff?
I think you're muted, Jeff.
Yeah, I got it. Sorry, forgive me. I normally give my presentations on Microsoft Teams, so the buttons are in a little bit different place. So, does everybody see my screen?
Yes.
All right, good. So I just wanted to say that this project, there were some seeds for this project. Rails to Trails had the vision for the 35-mile loop, and Tom Stoser, former planning director, had an idea to connect all of the city with a green network. And it started with something from our standpoint, from the city side, the green network plan. And it was a very comprehensive effort to figure out where we could create a trail network that just reached all over the city. And it reached further than what we're talking about today. But it was a vision that it had a little bit of funding, but not a funding to execute the whole vision. And then that was a challenge. Both the Greenway Trails and the Baltimore Green Network had a big vision, not much funding. And believe me, there's no like line item in the budget to create a big trail network. So it's been tough, but there's a lot of optimism in particular now. Mayor Scott has made this one of his mayoral priorities. And then with the potential of infrastructure money that wasn't there before, the idea of getting this done faster is now feeling more realistic. So with that being said, this is going in the right direction. So with that, I will start my presentation. So, and I know there's a lot of architects on this call, as I've seen. I thought there was going to be a lot of land use, but not so many architects. So, but we heard, I mean, for a decade, it was all the rage of transit-oriented development, and maybe this is the decade of trail-oriented development, the other TOD. We're just seeing all around the country and the world, places put renewed focus on it. So again, forgive me for the architects in the room, but you see on this slide, traditionally, well, there's one prototype that says basically ignore the street and the public space altogether. Let's put everything inside. And then there's been an evolution that said, okay, let's spill things out onto the street. And now with trail-oriented development, it's shifting it to the trail side away from the cars if there is room, and moving the indoor-outdoor trail symbiosis, something like this. And what does that mean? I mean, does it have to be a start from scratch scenario? It could be retrofitting existing buildings. And here you see two places that were essentially the backs of their businesses, but now basically have two front sides. I mean, you park in the front, you go in the front door, or you come on the trail, you park on the trail, and you go through that front door. So it's a two front door way to design when you're retrofitting to meet the trail design. And this may seem obvious, but there's so many. If you ride trails around the country, you see a lot of dumpsters next to the trail. It just doesn't get the front side treatment that it would help the business to provide. This here was a game I was going to play, but we're running a little bit behind, and I know you have a lot of tough questions for Jim that I know you want to ask. So I'm going to skip this, but essentially what this does is this is a come visit Greenville, South Carolina. Please don't visit Greenville, South Carolina, but it's a video that promotes their city. And it's I think 3 or 4 minutes. And the game I was going to play is show me count how many trail scenes there are, count how many trail-oriented developments you see, and the number of places that could theoretically be reached by trails. And you basically see the whole city of Greenville. The way they portray themselves is sort of a trail or walk or bike friendly location. The references to drive and park there's like one or so in there, but they're clearly, if you watch this, you'll really just sort of say, oh, this is a hidden trail-oriented development infomercial, but disguised as city of Greenville marketing itself. But if you wanted to do that, just all you have to do is Google visit Greenville. But just in interest of time, I will not show that. I point this out, trail-oriented development is not completely new, and it's not completely new to Baltimore. I can't remember how long the promenade is now, but it's 8 to 10 miles, I guess. Somebody on this call probably knows exactly. But essentially, it is trail-oriented development. And for the most part, the development is very in sync with the promenade. And if you look at some of the new development at Harbor East, you can see that they're adding extensions that essentially create outdoor space right against the trail. So like the restaurants are literally building like these mini cafes. I think Uzo Bar, I'm not really sure exactly which ones, but near Harbor East, you can just see how the design is really taking into the trail because they know that's where the business is. There's a lot of business going by on our Inner Harbor Promenade. This is a little bit of a transition here, but about 3 years ago, we had dockless vehicles, i.e. scooters, companies coming into the city. And there's been a lot of talk, but the city has embraced them. And while we don't have a phenomenal on-street network for them, if you look at these numbers, and I know it's a little bit blurry, but I think the top number there is September 2019, had 292,000 and some change riders. Well, I just saw something just pop up on my screen touting that like the Cincinnati Bell streetcar, which costs a whole bunch of money, just got like 50,000 riders a month. So this stuff is blowing away the Cincinnati streetcar, just for what it's worth. And this is a lot of people riding scooters, and they're coming back. I mean, obviously it dies down in the winter, and it died down some during COVID, but it's coming back strong. And this is going to be a major transportation network. And obviously, or maybe not obviously, but having a trail system that can both allow walkers and joggers and dog walkers and stroller pushers and bicyclists and scooters is going to maximize the use for all users, and people getting back and forth from businesses, social events, restaurants, work, and so forth. There's an urban design component to scooters. When they first came out, and even to this day, they're often littered all over the sidewalks, and it's not the most aesthetic look in the world. So the city has come up with a program to basically design a standard bike and scooter corral system, and are working with the vendors to sort of give, I don't remember what it is, but like 10 cents or 25 cents if you return it to it's voluntary, but if you return it to a corral, you get a little bit of stipend. And this will help keep our city neater. It'll also create go-to places where you can always get a scooter, so you'll start seeing more and more of these. This one's at Cross Street Market, and I don't remember how many are in the city now, but over 10. This is another transition. So what this slide represents is, if you can see this closely, there's a little ring here. This is the trail loop, and the green parts represent what is already built. This is the Gwynns Falls Trail here. This is the Inner Harbor Promenade. This is the Jones Falls Trail, which continues off the map here to Mount Washington. This is the Herring Run Trail. And then the yellow is what is something Jim and I are working on every day. It's the parts that aren't built. But what I wanted to show this group was, this is an overlay with zoning. So that if you are a commercial developer or a multifamily developer or whatever you look to build, you can say, hey, I'm only interested in commercial. Well, then I can turn off the residential layer and produce a map that has the trail overlay with the zoning that you would find that's most appropriate. So this map is very colorful and clustered because it's all the zoning layers, but if the planning department can just isolate a layer, I just want R9 and the trail, then we can do that too, and it won't look so busy. So here's another trail. So again, you see the trail overlay, green is built, yellow is unbuilt. And if you look down here at the legend, these are various geographic designations that come with incentives. So there are incentives in the arts district for various kinds of development or activities or entrepreneurial support. Enterprise comes with its own toolkit of support. Main streets come with a toolkit. And then the NIF is for those of you who don't know, it's called the Neighborhood Investment Fund. It's a pot of money somewhere in the vicinity of $50 million that provides financing, that is a financing arm to areas of the city that don't always get developed. So, the corridor that we generally think of that gets a lot of development in here, not eligible for NIF, but these blue areas out here and out here that don't get funding, would have access to this. And I think there's some experts on the call on this as well. And then I think lots of us have heard about the opportunity zones. They're the light blue area here, and you can see how that program and incentive layer overlaps here. So again, we can disaggregate if you're only interested in one of these, only NIF or only opportunity zones. We can turn everything else off and put together that map. And then I just wanted to also put this map. It's very hard to see the trail because the other layer has got a lot of colors, but our housing and community development created this layer, and it's population change. I mean, I think a lot of people know the city isn't on net growing, but it's a very, by geography, we're growing, we're booming, and we're really contracting a lot in other geographies. It's a very mixed bag. So if you look at this map, it looks fairly even, but green is growth, and yellow's pretty just stable and neutral. And then the reds and the oranges are areas that were hemorrhaging population. And the time frame is 2008-12 and 14-18. And if you have any questions about the methodology of this, I'm going to have to punt on this. Our housing department did this. But I think, look, you see a lot of loss here. That might be uplands. But anyway, long story short, the trail can be overlaid with all kinds of different data sets. So Jim mentioned the Warner Street Entertainment Zone. This is roughly, I just made this little box here. It's roughly right there. It's going to have roughly a 3,700 seat sort of theater / rock concerts event space. The Top Golf is going in here. The casino is here. They're looking at a lot of outdoor sort of drinking and entertainment areas here, and a hotel here. You can see it's next to the casino. It's next to the stadiums. So this is the area called the Warner Street Entertainment Zone. And we're very happy to say that these developers are like, we have to have people on bikes and scooters be able to get to our location. It is off the beaten track. We want people to come from the Inner Harbor, get on a scooter, have a good trail, and be able to get to this development. And it was very important, and since the trail we're working on goes right there, we're very happy to see that. This is slightly an offshoot of the trail, but all throughout the Warner Street Entertainment Zone, they have dedicated space for things besides cars. So this is a rendering. You can see M&T Bank Stadium in the distance here, and over where my mouse is the harbor, and sort of behind me is Pigtown. And the Top Golf would be sort of about where my cursor is here. This is Port Covington, which, with all the discussions, if you go by there right now, there's a lot of construction cranes. It like Warner Street Entertainment Zone has infrastructure. It's not just car infrastructure, and it's been woven through almost every street, to my knowledge. It also will have a trail promenade on its edges. And then this area right here, for any history buffs, this was a live presentation. I'd ask if anybody knows where this is, but I think everybody does. This is Canton Crossing right here. And look at that industry. And then this, about 3 years ago, you could see a tank farm here, and it's been pulled out. And there's a new development coming here. This is I-95 is out here. I mean, if you're from Baltimore, you probably know where that is. And the developer, well, I'll just go back. When the developer came in and proposed it, we were like, oh my gosh, that's where we want the trail to go. Like, uh-oh. And we worked with the developer, and they said, okay, we'll put the trail in. And then what they did is they sent it around the edge at Haven Street's a truck route, and it went out the side. And we were like, well, we're really happy you did this, but we'd really like it if you would have it actually go through your development, where there is now a grocery store and a very large multifamily buildings under construction here, once planned for here, and they will have planned an office building here. So luckily, or we were convincing either way, they said, yeah, we're going to redo it, and we're going to have the trail come through the site. And I guess the northeast corner, this is the footprint of the multifamily building, and the trail is going to come along here. You can see it. And then usually the fire department makes things a little hard for active infrastructure, but here they're like, look, we need to get fire trucks along here, make this trail 20 feet. So that was fire department in our favor. So this trail is 20 feet along here. And this is the image of where the trail will go along. Admittedly, it's surface, or it's structured parking, but the developer agreed to put murals on the side and dress it up. And so it's not literally just driving by the bottom of a parking garage, but it'll be a lot better design than originally. And we've gotten into some evolutions of streetscape, and this was probably a middle submission. And then the current design now this is a shop with the ability to be outside and sort of interact with the trail and street furniture. And originally designed, this was the back of the garage, so we got some big time improvements here. And then this was taken about a month ago, and you can see the building under construction here, and where I have the mouse is where the trail will go along that curve. So this is super exciting because it's being built, and as a city employee, it's being built with their money, their design, the private sector. So we're extremely grateful that they're doing it, and that they listen to us, and they've become really supportive of it and improve their design. So that's a real happy story for us. And this right here is going to be that area with the plaza and the retail. So when the scooters and the bikes and the joggers and the baby stroller pushers come by here, they'll be able to stop by and get something to eat or drink, whatever the retail is. But I don't want to just only talk about big fancy new developments, because that's not what we're all about. It's also, how can we support existing ones? This is a crab house. The trail likely will take this lane right here. We're putting in a trail in the existing city, and sometimes it doesn't lay out like putting it in the middle of a park. You got to squeeze it in, but it will go by this BGE electrical substation. And here's a crab house, and this is just a great opportunity. They're going to have a lot of people coming by using the trail, and they could sell crabs or ice cream, like anything they want to add. I don't know how many people want to, like, midway through a 30-mile bike trip or a 5-mile bike trip want to eat crabs, but if it's a midway stop, they might want to offer ice cream or something like that. But this will support this kind of business as well. This is the Oliver Brewing Company, which is just off of a section that Jim mentioned. We're trying to build in a BGE utility corridor. And if you look at some breweries in other parts of town where people do a lot of biking and scooting, I won't comment on drinking and scooting, but they're going to get a lot of business when we get this done. And here's another, major institution. This is the Baltimore Zoo, or the Maryland Zoo in Baltimore, excuse me. And then this is the Jones Falls Trail, and it's a rather unceremonious front entrance for the trail. I think people walk by here and they don't even know that is the Jones Falls Trail. They don't know that they could take that trail to Penn Station if they wanted to, if they were coming from Washington. Go on to Silver and Arboretum in the other direction. It's a very underplayed part of the infrastructure. And I don't know how many people attend the zoo, but the parking for the zoo is right where my mouse is now. And they literally walk over the Jones Falls Trail and probably don't even know they do it. So it's a real missed opportunity from my perspective to champion the trail to just people who aren't going to use it. They're just going to walk over it, but they can go, hey, oh my, this is a trail. And also for people who use the trail to come to the zoo. My guess it would be in the zoo's best interest if people use the trail to get to the zoo. And this kind of is a wrap on what I'm trying to cover. I'm sure Jim's going to get questions. This is just this is a resource for active transportation and real estate if you're not aware of it by ULI. So I think that is where I'll leave it. Check out the Greenville thing and just do the exercise on your own if you are so inclined. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff and Jim. A terrific presentation by both of you. We've got a number of questions, and if you don't mind, we can go beyond by maybe 10 minutes and get in as many questions as we can. One question is, how do these trails hook up to those trails in the various counties, Anne Arundel, Baltimore County, and others?
Sure. Jeff, I'll go first. When we started building this coalition and beginning to fundraise, we saw the challenges of working across the jurisdictional lines. So we made a decision to focus just in the city. And then that also helped build a stronger relationship with Baltimore city government the great relationship we have now. But to answer your question, with the successes we've had in the recent years, that's really gotten the attention of the surrounding counties, Baltimore County, Howard County, and Arundel County. So north, south, and east, there are real connections that make perfect sense, connecting the Jones Falls Trail in North Baltimore up through Towson towards the NCR Trail, the Gwens Falls Trail on the west side of the city, through Catonsville and Ellicott City into the Patapsco Valley Greenway system, and then south from Westport, Cherry Hill, Middle Branch to the existing BWI Trail and Baltimore Annapolis Trail in Anne Arundel County. So now all those municipalities are paying attention and starting to dedicate some resources into investigating those connections. So we're still early, but we're optimistic. This is an important critical phase where we're turning this into a very regional project. And one real thing that happened just this past year is that the Greater Baybrook Alliance and MedStar Harbor Hospital in South Baltimore got $500,000 in state community economic development funds to do 30% design of the trail from where the Gwens Falls Trail ends at Middle Branch to the existing BWI and Baltimore Annapolis Trail in Anne Arundel County. So they are managing that design process now, and then we'll be going after construction funds to complete that trail. And ideally, that similar things would play out on the west and northern sides of the city too.
I'll just add that not everybody wants to connect to Baltimore City, which I wish everybody did, but there's a lot of opportunities to make this a regional network. The Baltimore Metropolitan Council is the organization that is the interjurisdictional organization. And I would just add that we have so many utility corridors, and if we use them, we could create a relatively quick, I mean, if there was funding, regional network. You could go from the Torrey Brown Trail following under BG&E, like not everybody wants to go under towers, but that is where right-of-way exists. And you can make a lot of regional connections. You can follow the BG&E power lines virtually to the Susquehanna River. And you can also go south in that direction. And I'm not saying that it all should go there, but just in terms of a ready-made right-of-way system, That is there for the quickest, most efficient way to create a regional system, just from a like where the right of way exists.
After the capital costs are expended to complete the trail, who takes responsibility for maintaining it to a consistent 35-mile standard, graffiti removal, landscape maintenance, signs, surface condition, security? So who operates and maintains the trail?
Rails to trails for sure.
Baltimore City. Jeff and I and many of our colleagues in our coalition we're trying to figure that out. We're asked it frequently. It's a very important question. Those of you that have been on some of the city's trails know that some are maintained better than others. And so we know that we can't just stop fundraising for capital. We would have to have a dedicated maintenance plan. And so I'm outside of municipal government, so I can advocate as an outsider. And we spend a significant amount of time advocating for federal and state funds to be available to municipalities, not just for capital costs, but for the ongoing maintenance. And our goal is that through tools like the economic impact study and looking at examples of other successful trail networks that are built in cities with challenging revenue streams, how they do it. And there's Conservancy models, there's special impact assessment districts. TIF financing is something no one in Baltimore wants to talk about anymore, and neither do I, but it's an example that has been used in other places. So it's really about investigating those, finding out what's a good fit for Baltimore, and making sure that when we're advocating for this, we're not stopping at just capital. We're advocating for a sustained source of maintenance and programming. That could be we're investigating how that can be tied into youth workforce development. Can we hire people from neighborhoods across the city, particularly youth, through programs like Youth Works or summer jobs, and create a green industry training pipeline? There's a number of scenarios that I don't have the answer to yet, but we're not going to give up. We're going to figure out how to make this a sustainable maintenance source.
Yeah, I mean, I would say at a minimum, a lot of the new sections are going to be in the Department of Transportation right of way. So sort of the direct answer is they're going to be responsible, but we're certainly hopeful that either a Conservancy model evolves or a less formal, we love the trail, this goes in front of our house, we're going to take care of it. But it is something that's top of mind, and it's and the realistic answer is we're challenged at maintenance all over the city, but it is top of mind, and we're thinking about it a lot and thinking about different options like conservancies and adopting adopting certain sections, but we certainly don't want to have an unequitable situation where parts of the trail are very nicely maintained because they have an outside maintainer, and then other parts of the trail, maybe in poor neighborhoods, are not as well maintained and have a discontinuous maintenance level, and that would be not a good outcome. So we don't have a crystal ball. We're trying. We know it's an issue.
And security, is that part of what you're talking about there?
So security is kind of an interesting. I'm just going to talk about it as safety. So a lot of the existing trails are deep in the forest in our very biggest parks. So after dark, they're dark. They don't have lights and so forth, but they're already there. So it is a little bit of a status quo situation. So we'll have to think about, do we want to improve? Of course we want to improve, but how will improve safety sort of on the existing part of the network? The new parts of the network are going to be adjacent to sidewalks and adjacent to roads. So there shouldn't be, they should already have light, and the safety shouldn't be particularly different than it is now. Not that it is where it is now is acceptable, but we're certainly trying to use, sorry for the background noise, I've got a full house here. We're certainly trying to use good urban design to create the safest designs possible, but it's Baltimore. We know that it's a top of mind issue. Oh, and the last thing I just want to talk about, for the parts in the new part, we're very concerned about intersections. Like, this has got to be designed so that people can get through intersections safely. So that is another top of mind concern. And RK&K is, for the northern section, is our on-call consultant. And I don't know if this is, I mean, one of our number one concerns is getting trail users across intersections safely. And so that's a very big concentration.
How is the developer funding the trail improvements at Canton Crossing? And can this be a model for other development along the trail network?
I guess that one's for me too. Well, you know, so the Canton, the collective at Canton is a master plan development where essentially it's there's privately funded infrastructure, and then within that there's 5 or 6 development parcels with potentially different developers developing each of the parcels. So the master plan was developed, and essentially they were planning on putting sidewalks in anyway. But when we came in and said, we're trying to put a trail here, and this is how it will benefit you. We anticipate, look at the Harbor Promenade 3 blocks over. Look how many people are on there. Don't you want them to continue upward to your grocery store, to your retail? They're like, yeah, we get that. Let's have a good trail and have it come right to us.
Yeah, it was definitely a case of the developer getting it. It wasn't a lot of tugging and pulling. I think that section of town is very stretched thin in terms of infrastructure for cars, be it parking and congestion. And I think developers recognize that anyone moving into that part of town is going to be okay getting around the neighborhood or getting to other parts of town without a vehicle. And I think that once he got familiar with the idea of where the trail would go, what it would connect to, like Jeff said, it really made sense for his bottom line. So it's a very good outcome, and hopefully it will not be as unique as it is now in the future.
Isn't Canton Crossing part of the original red line alignment? And what's being done to preserve that right away, or will this preclude a future red line?
Our position is that there's room for the red line and the trail to coexist. We call it rail with trail, where a trail and a train are co-located in the same corridor. That those opportunities are decreasing though, as more places like this get filled in. So that we need to work more closely and stronger with the transportation advocates. I personally think these trail networks are only successful when they're connected to local public transit, and something like the red line needs to happen in Baltimore, and it needs to intersect with a trail network like this. The trail is 20 feet wide, where Jeff mentioned. Most of the unused railroad corridor north of there ranges from 30 to 100 feet wide. So most of that corridor still allows opportunity to have a trail and the train in the same corridor safely.
We'll just add that this goes by Mondawmin Metro, the existing Mondawmin Metro stop. It connects it. There are intersecting areas with the existing light rail, and also the existing Jones Falls Trail goes by Penn Station.
One of our questioners or one of our listeners has asked about the impact on University of Maryland, Baltimore, University of Maryland medical system. Can you speak to those two?
I think I saw that comment, and I think it may have been in response to one of my slides. I'll have to check that. I thought University of Maryland was on there. They're certainly a huge economic driver. And while the University of Maryland Medical Campus and Hospital downtown doesn't sit right on the network, it's only a couple blocks away from existing trail at the harbor, and then a couple blocks away from soon to be built trail that connects to Middle Branch and the rest of the city. So we'll update those slides. They're part of our coalition as well.
Are there specific design standards for what constitutes a trail, the width of the path, the surface, street crossings, etc.?
I'll jump in there. I mean, this has been a big challenge because, you know, sometimes people who don't love the trail want to winnow it down to a sidewalk.
Or a bike lane.
Or a bike lane. So we've been advocating to try and get it to be 12 to 16 feet. And because we anticipate, at least our side of the lobbying effort anticipates people using the trail. Some are going to be walking, some are going to be running, some are going to be bicycling. And those are 3 different speeds. And we want to have enough width that somebody bicycling and somebody on a stroller can cross it by, and not just have it be people having to get off the trail, like just a lot of, and to do that with the volume that we anticipate in most, we really need 16 feet, but it may not be realistic. So we basically said 12 feet. If there is room, you know, in some places, I mean, the Harbor Promenade next to the pavilions is like 40 or 50 feet wide, and look how busy that is. So width is something we're fighting for.
And yeah, and places in the Middle Branch that are greenfield or brownfield now that don't have the constraints of when they're built environment sections could be 20 feet or more wide. But the challenge too is that the city does not have a trail design guideline now. It's also an opportunity because we're doing preliminary design on some of these sections. So it's the opportunity to make that uniform design standard and guideline that can be applicable to rec and parks, DOT, any other conservancies that are taking on projects like this. Because the more uniform the network is in design, the more recognizable and welcoming it'll be to people and accessible to people.
I mean, one challenge is you know, to have a standard that you can't deviate from. You know, adding an additional foot wide could cost an additional $2 million. So like, it has to have some flexibility because we don't have endless money. So we don't want the perfect to be the enemy of the good. But I definitely am pushing it to be as wide as possible within reasonable budget constraints.
Maybe one last question. Has there been experience in other communities where inner city communities have specifically benefited by a trail, more jobs or more improvement in their neighborhoods?
There's an ongoing body of research into that. What we've seen at Rails to Trails is that a lot of the research that's happened so far has been a response to either real or perceived gentrification and displacement that may come from that, but there hasn't been a lot of research into quantifiable, sourceable research into what you just asked, Nathan. And so a lot of it is anecdotal, but we've seen on the projects that I've been involved in that have gone through neighborhoods where there has traditionally been less investment and neighborhoods that have traditionally been left out of the planning process. I'm thinking of one in Detroit called the Joe Louis Greenway, and one in DC called the Metropolitan Branch Trail. We've heard from neighbors and residents and trail users about ways that where they had to take a 25-minute walk to school before to go around an illegal railroad crossing. They now get to school in 5 minutes, and it's much safer and it's a much more enjoyable experience. The biggest ones that we hear more often are just really the cutting down on commuting time and taking out some of the cost of commuting to job centers and job opportunities. So last minute mile connections. And then really the quality of life enhancements of being able to be more active, having safe places where you can interact with your neighbors, that you don't have to worry about the danger of speeding traffic or other public safety issues. So it's really, the benefits that we've seen have all come down to accessible access to places to enjoy life and to have a higher quality of life that aren't afforded right now when you can't participate in your planning of your neighborhood, or you live in a place that doesn't have safe places to walk and bike.
If I could just maybe add in, the Indianapolis example is a trail system that sort of covers the last two questions. I mean, they quantified their benefits quite a bit. And they also have the problem that they go often on shared right-of-way, and that they have to vary the standards to the conditions, but they manage to get it done so that no matter on what particular portion of the trail you are, you can always find your way and you always feel safe.
Yeah, there's other questions that we have, but in the interest of time, I think we'll leave it at that. But want to thank both Jeff and Jim for very interesting presentations. We will be posting this event, the replay of it for anyone who is interested. It'll be on our website. We'll also be posting more information about the bike ride coming up next month, and you should all be getting notification of that. So thank you everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jeff and Jim.
Thank you, Jeff and Jim. Yeah.
Thank you.
Join us on July 22.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.